What are you calling about?
Gunshots, multiple.
Did you see anything suspicious or you just heard it?
No, ma'am, just hearing it.
Okay. How many did you hear?
Oh, man, it's about 8 or 10, if not more. Like this AK-47, it's not a 22, I can assure you.
It's a sad fact that crimes against women continue to grow in number. It is also true that several movements have sprung up to help women who are victims of crime seek justice. What happens, however, when a deeply disturbed individual capitalizes on the support from these movements to falsify narratives, bastardize the movement, and cause misery to innocent people? #MeToo and #TimesUp have normalized the conversation around sexual assault, abuse, and crimes against women. For the first time, these movements have provided a platform where victims are listened to, believed, and encouraged to navigate the legal system to get justice for their cases. What then prompts a woman such as Eleanor Williams to convince the whole world that she is a victim of abuse? Racial profiling, self-injury, and a concocted web of lies. This case is as perplexing as they come. Claims about repeated sexual abuse at the hands of an Asian grooming gang resulted in 3 upstanding men being subject to slander and driven to the brink of suicide. Come with us as we unpack today's case and discuss the intriguing psyche of the perpetrator in this latest bite-sized true crime recap. Deception Unveiled, Eleanor Williams Exposed. Eleanor Williams grew up in a well-off family with no dark secrets or history of abuse, and her childhood and teenage years were fairly unremarkable. Eleanor, who was 22 when she made the accusations in May 2020, hailed from a decent family. Her grandmother served on the Cumbria City Council in the Barrow area of the UK and worked as a cabinet minister for Children's Service, while her mother was well-liked in her role as a councillor for the Labour Party. The family's good name fueled the community's rage when they were told that Eleanor had been abused and exploited by human trafficking rings. Everyone who knew Eleanor and her family rallied in favor of her and did everything in their power to get justice for the seemingly helpless victim of sexual assault. The impact of the #MeToo movement grew during the lockdowns. Victims were reassured that online channels and campaigns would continue to guarantee them justice even while the whole world shut down. Due to the notable rise in violence towards women during the pandemic, people were even more ready to believe Eleanor Williams when she came forward with her story. Images of her bruised, beat-up face and partially cut-off finger were shared widely via social media, inspiring sympathy along with a campaign for her assailants to be brought to justice. She claimed that she was beaten and raped during sex parties hosted by Pakistani men who belonged to a trafficking ring. Once she shared her story publicly, more than 1,000 people raised money for her Just Giving campaign so she could pay her legal team. The Justice for Ellie Facebook page had more than 100,000 members sharing her story, donating to her campaign, and designing merchandise. People from all over the UK turned their attention to the small town of Cumbria. Unfortunately, though, there were ugly repercussions from Eleanor's allegations, the main being the increased racism. Hate crimes against Asians and Asian-owned businesses tripled in the area, with a total of 151 crimes directly carried out by Justice for Ellie supporters. These crimes included harassment, criminal damages, public order felonies, and racially charged malice. Eleanor's assault allegations were vividly violent. She accused Oliver Gardner, a man who had randomly asked her for a lighter in the street one day, of rape, and she accused Jordan Trengrove of drugging her and sexually assaulting her at knife point. The Asian-American Barrow resident and restaurant owner Mohammed Ramzan, however, was hit with the worst allegation, that he was the head of a trafficking ring and had repeatedly raped and trafficked her from age 13. The charges against Ramzan detailed that he had trafficked Eleanor to Amsterdam and sold her for prostitution, whereas much later, people discovered that the man had met her only once at a family party. Eleanor's web of lies began unraveling when the police discovered that Eleanor had gone to Amsterdam to celebrate her sister's birthday. She was seen in surveillance footage completely alone at Preston Station. Ramzan, her supposed trafficker, was nowhere to be seen. Further investigation unearthed the fact that on the night of the alleged multiple assaults, Eleanor spent the entire time on her phone watching YouTube videos, as seen via her internet browsing history. She was also seen in the hotel camera buying instant noodles and milk at the hotel shop around 9:45 p.m., and again the following day as she returned home, with Preston bus station cameras indicating no visible injuries on her person. The list of names of 60 girls supposedly abused by Ramzan also blew holes in her story. When the police reached out to the girls named in the list, none seemed to know anything about the matter. One of the girls named in the list, Chloe, was 1 year senior to Eleanor and only knew her from school. She told detectives that she had not been near Morecambe and Preston, where the alleged abuse happened. She was also confused about why Eleanor named her as a victim in the list. They were only on cordial terms. Eleanor, to keep her cover, owned at least 6 mobile phones, which she used to make accounts of men she came across on Tinder and OnlyFans look like those of Asian traffickers and groomers. This lie was exposed when the account of one of the men she accused, Jordan Trengrove, was found to have been made by an IP address and Wi-Fi server at Eleanor's home. What is even more horrific about the revelations is that Eleanor was found buying a hammer at Tesco, which forensic pathologists determined she used to inflict the injuries onto her own self. The reality of who Eleanor really was as a person shocked the community. Her previous rap sheet detailing a false statement made to a nurse about an assault in 2017 and her drug habits, marijuana and cocaine, were brought to light. What is even more confusing is that despite undeniable evidence, Eleanor's mother continued to support her lies. She claims a national referral order was filed for Eleanor, identifying her as a victim of human trafficking and modern-day slavery. Eleanor's sister Lucy is no different, and she continues to insist that Eleanor is telling the truth. Besides the racially motivated attacks on Asian residents and vandalism on a curry house in the area, Muhammad Ramzan's home was raided at night with significant property damage. He received countless death threats on social media and had to leave the town for several months for fear of his safety. Jordan Trengrove, in the meantime, spent 73 days in prison, his house reportedly spray-painted with the words rapist, while Oliver Gardner was charged under the Mental Health Act and suffered due to Eleanor's false accusation of rape. A journalist who first reported on the inconsistencies in Eleanor's story following her initial court appearances was hounded and had to leave the town for safety. Another Muslim Asian restaurant owner, named in her list of men, suffered losses amounting to thousands of pounds, had the windows of his restaurant smashed, and was slugged with beer bottles while called the racial slur Paki and chased down the street. People who lie about abuse and rape are usually products of violent or neglectful households. Ignored by authority figures, they harm themselves to get attention, which can turn extremely pathological. This is the only explanation that was presented by criminal psychologists in the case of Eleanor Williams, the woman whose lies could have gotten 3 innocent men long-term jail sentences. The only indications that she was disturbed came from the 32 missing reports her family had filed, incidents which had all been quickly and readily resolved. Eleanor and her family continued to maintain her innocence and have even filed an appeal to her sentence. Her statements have led to massive condemnation and fury. I understand that it's your job to believe the jury's verdict, and that's okay. I know I have made some mistakes. I'm sorry. I know it's no excuse, but I was young and confused, she stated. Eleanor Williams was sentenced to 8.5 years and convicted of 9 counts of perverting the course of justice and making false criminal allegations. Justice Altham took note of her lack of remorse during the proceedings and called her accounts complete fiction. Victim impact statements given by Ramzan, Gardner, and Trengrove, as well as the statements given to the media, detailed how all of them had attempted suicide due to the allegations. The prolific liar seemed unconcerned with the verdict, waving goodbye to her mother and sister and thanking the judge for the verdict that landed her in jail. In a letter to the judge, Eleanor mentioned that she was devastated by the impact of her story on the community. No hate crime charges were brought against her, however, as the prosecution and the judge noted that her allegations were not racially motivated, and as a result, she wasn't responsible for the community's racially charged attacks. This case has sparked many conversations since about how detrimental false accusations are to actual abuse victims. Barrow authorities have released several statements pledging to better help victims following the media circus that surrounded Eleanor Williams' fantastic story of assault.